Good evening. Welcome to the student session. My name is Tor Oga, Associate Professor of Kyushu University. I'm moderator of this student session. This student session is a sort of endeavor, the first endeavor. In my understanding, the student session in the USJI that normally means the student studying session. We call for the speakers lecturing his or her subject, and we are studying from the topic. And this session is a bit different from the previous student session, which is undertook before. In this session, we have two student speakers, and both of them are presenting focal issues when we're studying the US-Japan relations. The media and public opinion and environmental ethics. After the presentation, I have some remarks to the presentations. And then the speakers responded very shortly. Afterwards, we moved to the floor discussion. So this session aimed to promote the dialogue among students from United States and Japan. So any questions, suggestions, and any comments are welcomed. So I quickly introduce the speakers. The first speaker is, in my left hand, the Minami Nomaguchi, the senior of Kyushu University. She presented a paper of media and public opinion, how Japanese media have broadcasted the US based in Okinawa. And the second speaker is Shunsuke Oda, the senior of Kyushu University, and he presented a paper, Intergenerational Justice, the ethical norms and policy coordination of sustainable development. Firstly, Mrs. Nomaguchi, please.
Good evening. I am Minami Nomaguchi. I belong to Faculty of Law, Kyushu University. I will demonstrate how Japanese media have broadcasted the US bases in Okinawa. This is an issue between media and politics. Is mass media useful? Today, one of the greatest changes has been made by the internet, especially what we call social networking services. We can know important and detailed information and send our opinions to all over the world. But such individual media is not almighty. There is a particular kind of information we cannot know individually. The best example is diplomatic information, which we cannot know them without mass media. However, a problem is mass media is not neutral, that mass media have controlled the public opinion with particular intentions. The tangible and latent public opinion. There are two kinds of public opinions, which is tangible and latent in the opinion polls, which are done frequently, and they are estranged. The problem of the American military bases in Okinawa in Japan is represented to them. But we can know this problem through reports of mass media because it is a highly diplomatic problem. So people say that mass media control the public opinion and policies of government. Controlling the public opinion. Surely, it can be said that mass media influence the opinions of people about the problem of the American military bases in Okinawa, whether the mass media is in favor of or opposed to that problem. But according to my hypothesis, we cannot say that mass media positively control the public opinion in fact. In short, I think that mass media affect the public opinion, that is to say, the framing effect, through descriptions or explanations of facts. My presentation will demonstrate this hypothesis. The agenda setting and the theory of power. The agenda setting is that mass media set an existence, appearance, and the order of a topic and an issue to define a frame of an interpretation which mass media want to promote the base and guiding of discussions. On the other hand, according to the theory of power, if people doubt the legitimacy of the reports of mass media, they influence the powerful persons with the legitimacy. Mass media then do not need to lead the public opinion. The priming effect. The priming effect is that mass media calls the general opinion when public opinion pay attention to a particular problem, and the problem becomes a standard in evaluating the other political object, like a political leader. It is said that the high approval rating of the first Abe cabinet results from that effect. The framing effect. The framing effect is famous by the news framing effect. It is for mass media to promote to a particular opinion of one issue by putting together the issue and the specific thinking or the concept. This is general studies of mass media that have already done. From this slide, I'll explain my study. Methodology. My research focuses on the editorials of the Asahi newspaper and the Yomiuri newspaper from 1990 to 2012 to investigate the press commentary. I count how many times they refer the terms Okinawa and the base in the editorials, classifying the description of facts, the explanation of facts, and the active commentary. And I consider how opinion polls about the American military bases in Okinawa in the Asahi newspaper and the Yomiuri newspaper from 1990 to 2012 correspond to the editorials. Finally, my research picks up the speeches of the prime ministers as an object of policies and counts how many times they refer to those two terms, Okinawa and base, in classifying the context. Definitions of terms. I want to define the confusing terms control, lead, and influence. My presentation uses them mainly in classifying the articles of the speeches of the prime ministers according to the context. Control is used in the active commentaries and lead is used in the explanations of facts. Influence is used in the descriptions of facts. But this usage is not suitable when newspaper or speeches do not describe specific facts repeatedly, because it is a too minor usage of influence as a wording. However, when my presentation uses its term, it includes that the minor usage for the convenience. The problem of the American military bases in Okinawa. There are the American military bases in Japan according to the Article 6 of the Treaty of Security between Japan and the United States of America, that is JUST. There are 133 bases in 25 prefectures in Japan. They range to 100,000 hectares. In particular, 40 military facilities are in Okinawa and it ranges over 4,000 hectares. They make up 10.7% of the size of Okinawa. That is why Okinawa is called the Island of American Military Bases. In addition, Okinawa's people are greatly influenced by bases. For example, pollution of noise, destruction of the environment, and of the ordinary lives of the Okinawa's people. Investigations 1. The editorials. In this slide, the blue line is the sum of the articles. The green one is the numbers of descriptions of facts per article. The purple one is that of explanations of facts, and the orange one is that of active commentaries per article. The sum of the articles about the problem of the American military bases in Okinawa increases rapidly. For example, in 1996, this one. in which a girl in Okinawa was raped by an for example, in 1996, in which the final report of Special Action Committee on Okinawa, SACO, announced, and in 1995, in which a girl in Okinawa was raped by an American soldier of Okinawa. This change of the sum signifies how the mass media were interested in those problems. When I compare three contexts, the description and the explanation of facts, and the active commentary, the explanation is always most in both newspapers. The active commentary of facts in the Asahi newspaper is less than the description, but the number of years when this phenomenon in the Yomiuri newspaper happened is less than the other newspaper. Moreover, the difference of the explanation and the description shrink in the years when the sum of the articles increase. That is to say, newspapers come out with clear evaluations or right and wrong measures to the government, devised to deal with the significant incidents about Okinawa bases too. Investigations 2, the opinion polls. In this slide, the red bar graph means when negative opinions are measured. Purple one means when the positives and negatives compete. And the green one means when positive opinions are measured. It is hard to consider that big differences exist in changes in three contexts respectively in the Asahi's editorials in 1996 to 1997 and 2010 and 2012, when many affirmative opinions about basis problem appear. But meanwhile, the sum of the articles also increased compared with previous years. It shows that the Asahi newspaper do not control the public opinion positively by the active commentary and the description of facts. A growing of the sum of the articles increased the opportunities at which readers of newspapers see that problem, and the people that have the positive opinions and do not state them publicly can become tangible. Investigations 3, the policies. In this slide, the blue line is description of facts, the green one is explanation of facts, and the purple one is active commentaries. In the speeches of the prime ministers, the numbers of the reference in the context of the active commentary are not necessarily most, because the speeches of the prime ministers are what he tells how he operates the policies. How do the numbers of three contexts or the sum of the articles change in some years near 1998, and in which the active commentary increases rapidly? The numbers of three contexts do not suggest big changes, but the sum of the references increases rapidly from 1996. However, the increase of the number of the active commentary changes in the only 10 times, and of course, the policies are influenced by the big incidents, in particular by that of 1995 or 1997, because the big events happened then. Evaluation. The mass media may use the priming effect rather than the framing effect because the number of the active commentary is not many to begin with, and the description of facts and the explanation change alike the active commentaries. This could be said from that the change of the sum of the articles influences the opportunities in which the readers of newspapers see the specific frames of issues. The changes of the policies stimulate the hidden positive opinions because there are the positive opinions in 1997 in spite of a large number of the negative opinions in the opinion polls in 1996. Conclusion 1. The studies of Takekawa and Mitani. There are two important existing studies concerning media and public opinions, Takekawa and Mitani. Takekawa uses the substantial analysis by Entman, and he says that the articles of which main topic is the simple facts form a part of the framing effect, for they could be chosen at the point of which the articles focus on the specific organizations and the individuals. Certainly, we can say that all the statements are part of the framing effect, but it truly means that it considers what issue the specific frames form by analyzing how they are repeatedly used. So the Takekawa's statement is not valid. On the other hand, Mitani says that the Japanese mass media restrict the choices of decision makers through reports which a distribution of Japanese society's sense of value reflects. However, he takes a notice to the only trends and changes of statements of the mass media. In the end, he downplays the political context and the statements of the mass media. Public opinions and don't correspond, in fact, as the problem of the American military bases in Okinawa does. Conclusion 2. Not necessarily controlling public opinions. It has been generally argued that the mass media control the public opinions. My presentation analyzes the commentary of a newspaper, opinion polls, and the trends of the policies in fact. As a result, that statement is not perfectly correct. That is, we can admit that the Japanese mass media use the priming effect, but they do not use the framing effect. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. And next, Mr. Oda, please.
Good evening. My name is Shunsuke Oda. I'm studying law at Kyushu University. Today, I'd like to talk about environmental ethics, ethical norms and policy coordination of non-anthropocentrism and intergenerational ethics. Let me begin my presentation. The environmental problem is one of the most important global issues which threaten our well-being, such as poverty, gender, and conflicts. In recent years, destruction of the environment has been progressed, and we are confronted with risk of ecosystems. For example, forest destruction, water and air pollution, loss of biodiversity, the warming of the earth, and so on. At the same time, environmental ethics, which considers extending the boundaries of ethical conservation, grew. My paper is examination of extending the boundaries of ethical conservation in terms of objects and time. Next slide shows the outline of my presentation. The purpose of my presentation is to attempt to point out defects in two pillars of ideas of environmental ethics, that is, non-anthropocentrism and intergenerational ethics. First, I will introduce about ideas of environmental ethics in general. Second, based on the explanation of environmental ethics, I will focus on non-anthropocentrism. Third, I'll explain intergenerational ethics and a plan called Agenda 21, which takes thought of intergenerational ethics seriously. Finally, due to the effects of ideas, I'll conclude that it is difficult to justify for the nations and the United Nations to impose policies based on non-anthropocentrism and intergenerational ethics. First, I will introduce environmental ethics. Some theories of environmental ethics find intrinsic value in non-human beings. The intrinsic value of non-human beings means that they have value in their own right. It is often contrasted with instrumental value, which means value for human beings. For example, to eat and to use animal experiments. The main feature of environmental ethics is extending the boundaries of ethical considerations in terms of object and time. Extending the boundaries in terms of object is called non-anthropocentrism, which advocates considerations for non-human beings. Extending in terms of time called intergenerational ethics, which advocates considerations for future generations. This slide shows extending the boundaries of considerations. The yellow arrow means extending in terms of objects. Anthropocentrism advocates that non-human natural world should be considered for its instrumental values, not for intrinsic value. Sentientism and ecocentrism will be introduced as a non-anthropocentric theory later. The red arrow means extending in terms of time, intergenerational ethics. At present, it considers only human beings. Now, I would like to move on to the second part of my presentation, which is about non-anthropocentrism. Non-anthropocentrism is an idea that ethical consideration should include non-human beings. Some theories give rights to individuals. The other theories put priority on total entity compared with individuals. I will give 3 examples: sentientism, biocentrism, and ecocentrism. Sentientism includes sentient animals such as mammals and bats. Biocentrism includes all animals in boundaries of considerations. In addition to that, ecocentrism includes even ecosystems such as forests, rivers, and so on. I'd like to introduce 3 theories. First, animal liberation. This is a theory of sentientism advocated by utilitarian Peter Singer. He describes unconsidering to sentient beings which have a sense of pain as discrimination, speciesism, like segregation and sexism. Second, the case for animal rights. This is a book written by Tom Reagan at 1983, which argued an animal rights theory derived from deontology. Reagan calls animals which have an inherent value subjects of life. Normal mammals from 1 year up must be considered ethically as subjects of life. Last, land ethics by Art Rabo. This theory can be interpreted in 2 ways. One interpretation is a holistic theory of ecocentrism, and the other is a holistic theory of anthropocentrism. As an interpretation of ecocentrism, land ethics considers non-humans and ecosystems, for example, forests, rivers, and land. As an interpretation of a holistic anthropocentrism, individuals individuals have responsibility for the capacity of the land for self-renewal. However, each theory has been criticized. As for the animal liberation, we can point at indefiniteness of boundaries of animals which have a sense of pain. Singer says that the appropriate boundary of conservation is between shrimps and oysters. However, there is no solid foundation for that boundary. In addition to, although the focus of animal liberation is preservation of animals, it doesn't work in case of animals are killed with no pain and used for profits of humans. In this case, profits of humans will be over sufferings of animals. With regard to the book, The Case for Animal Rights, there is no definite foundation why 1 year and over mammals must be concerned. Moreover, there are lacks of consistency in certain cases. For example, 4 persons and 1 dog are getting on a boat filled to capacity, and they find 1 person adrift at sea. In this case, legal says they should let 1 dog off and help 1 person. Lastly, land ethics has possibility of environmental fascism, also known as ecofascism. Briefly, ecofascism is a term which means to justify suppressing of human rights for environmental protections. These controversies are reflected in actual court cases. Some non-anthropocentric theories believe that no human beings are qualified to appeal to a court for their preservation. Early in the 20th century, an argument about the dam construction project in Yosemite National Park arose at 1908. It was the start of controversies surrounding environmental thought, conservation versus preservation. Conservation is similar to anthropocentrism, which places priority on profits of human beings. On the other hand, preservation is similar to non-anthropocentrism, which keep nature intact for their inherent values. The next case is sharecraft versus model. There is a case on the issues of environmental standards surrounding the development project in the Mineral King Valley. Judge William O. Douglas asserted that inanimate objects have legal standing in his dissenting opinion, depending on Christopher Stone's argument, should tree have standing. As a result, although sharecraft lost, the project was cancelled. So far, these cases show giving non-human beings the rights is too difficult to be justified practically. Actually, legislative policies to preserve animals don't go beyond the bounds of animal welfare, and non-human beings don't have the right to appeal to a court at present. In my opinion, the environment should have priority over rights and interests of individual humans. Such a holistic view is necessary to solve the environmental problems. Among 3 theories, the land ethics represent, in my opinion, most. Next, I would like to move on to the third part of my presentation, which is about intergenerational ethics and Agenda 21. About intergenerational ethics, mainly 3 scholars have influenced discussion. The first scholar, John Rawls, in his book A Theory of Justice, advocated that Each generation ought to save capital depending on fair standards and just saving principle. Another scholar, Schroeder-Fletcher, in his theory, the theory of intergenerational contract, asserts that social contracts can be concluded between present and future generations. Fletcher quotes Japanese on. One makes past payment on towards ancestors by giving equally good or better things to posterity. The last scholar, Hans Jonas, in his book, The Concept of Responsibility, asserts an absolute proposition that humanity should survive and responsible as a founder. Each person has a differentiated responsibility for future generations. These scholars have been criticized. First, the relationship between present and future generations is asymmetry. Naturally, future generations aren't born yet. Therefore, present generation must have one-sided duties. Although in the same generation, someone's rights is someone's duty. Second, the extent of conservation and profits for future generations are indefinite. If we must consider the generation 1,000 years in the future, we can't use any resources. Despite this criticism, intergenerational ethical policies are found in Agenda 21. The main idea of Agenda 21 is sustainable development. It is defined as development, which meets the needs of the current generation without jeopardizing the needs of future generations. This definition by the United Nations clearly shows that sustainability requires consideration for future generations. Therefore, intergenerational ethics and Agenda 21 look at the same direction. Let me briefly introduce what Agenda 21 is. Agenda 21 is an action plan of the United Nations with regard to sustainable development for 21st century. A characteristic of the plan is to approve the common but differentiated responsibility, which advocated in the Rio Declaration. I'll make clear differences between Agenda 21 and intergenerational ethics by comparing them from 2 points of view. One is giving rights to future generations or not. The other is imposing differentiated duty or uniform duty. Only the theory of intergenerational contract agrees that future generations have rights. The theory of intergenerational contract and the theory of justice impose duty to consider future generations on the present generation uniformly. Theory of justice imposes universal duty on present and future generations. On the other hand, the concept of responsibility advocates imposing duties depending on individuals' own will. For example, a politician has heavier responsibilities than a citizen because of a will to be a politician. From the above, we can find that Agenda 21 and the concept of responsibility have the same idea, differentiated responsibility. In this part of my presentation, I have made clear that Agenda 21 makes a mistake, taking it granted for that sustainability is justifiable. Imposing duty to to concern on the present generation should be grounded on the present generational ethics at present. Policies grounded on the intergenerational ethics have threat to suppress the present generation. Therefore, consideration for future generations should be up to will of each individual's human beings. Now, I'd like to conclude my presentation. In terms of to whom and what, in terms of object, we need a holistic thought rather than individualistic thought in order to solve the environmental problems. However, it must be noted that holistic theory can cause environmental fascism. In terms of time, imposing duty to concern future generations is unjustified. Therefore, we should consider future generations on our own initiative in the present situation. Common but differentiated responsibility seems reasonable, especially in view of ability and fairness. A developed country ought to have heavier responsibility for environmental problems than a developing country. My paper examines environmental ethics, which concerns the extending of ethical considerations in terms of object and time. We must take measures to solve environmental problems. However, it is difficult to justify policies based on non-anthropocentrism and intergenerational ethics. Though much still remains to be unsettled, I believe I made a few contributions towards the subject by pointing at defects in theories of environmental ethics. With this remark, I'd like to end my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your presentations. I have some remarks to each presentation. The first paper, the media and politics. Well, everyone says the media is controlling the politics, but the question is how. The Nomagachi's paper provides the detailed analysis of editorials of newspaper and policy speech with relation to public opinions. So the idea is she focused on the discourses on the media and politics, and the quantitatively uncovers how the newspaper influenced the public opinion, or how the newspaper influenced the policy discussions. So I have three brief questions. Firstly, she shows you show the two different public opinion, the tangible public opinion and the latent public opinions. So my first question is, what are the differences between the two, the tangible and latent public opinions? And in case of U.S. bases in Okinawa, what would be the tangible public opinion and what would be latent the public opinion? It's my first question. The second question is, also you show the concept of priming effect and the framing effect. So in case of US based in Okinawa, what is the priming effect and what is the framing effect? It's my second question. And the third question is, I think in the latter part of your presentation, you showed three different schemes: the description of facts and explanation of facts and the active commentary in the editorials. So my question is, how can you distinguish among the three different concepts? So is there any objective standards, or is it just your interpretations? It's my third question. And next, the environmental effects. I think the paper shows the theoretical and practical or policy coordination of environmental ethics. the presentation introduced the three different theories of intergenerational ethics: the theory of justice, the theory of intergenerational contract, and the concept of responsibility. And it is very interesting for me. There are three different understandings and three different ways to justify intergenerational ethics. So I can understand we have a different frameworks of intergenerational ethics, but I'm not quite sure. It is my first question. My first question is, on which theoretical ground are you standing on? I mean, how do you compare and how do you evaluate the three different theories of intergenerational ethics? And my second question is, in the part of your presentation, you said the Agenda 21 is based on intergenerational ethics. So, related to the first questions, my second question is, on which theoretical background or on which theoretical ground is Agenda 21 based on intergenerational ethics? And the third question is the more practical questions. How can we institutionalize the intergenerational ethics? I mean, how can we legalize, or how can we make policy coordination or decision-making procedures of the intergenerational ethics? Yes, yeah, that's it. So, could you respond to them one by one? Firstly, Mrs. Margaret, please.
Okay. I will answer his first question. What are definitions of the tangible public opinion and latent public opinion? The tangible opinion is a specific view which is shown definitely in opinion polls. It does not matter whether that opinion is major or minor. Latent opinion is a view which is not shown definitely in opinion polls, but can influence the specific issue. In the program of the U.S. bases in Okinawa, the tangible opinion is the arguments that, for example, the U.S. bases are not good for Okinawa's people's lives, so the Japanese government should discuss about the withdrawal of U.S. soldiers with the U.S. government. This argument tend to be argued in the opinion polls. On the other hand, the latent opinion is Okinawa's people don't like the U.S. bases, but by the U.S. bases, they can work for the U.S. bases. For example, the restaurant for U.S. soldiers and the bar. So it is they are the examples. Yes, and answering second question. Just a moment. In the program of U.S. bases, the framing effect is that the mass media definitely argue in the editorials how general people think about the U.S. bases and how the government should do as the opinion of newspaper. And the priming effect is that mass media repeatedly tell that program and explain the background and the intentions of it. And people tend to think it with those background or intentions. There are little cases of framing effect in the editorials, but there are many cases of priming effect in the editorials. because the more the number of the descriptions of facts increases, the more the sum of the articles about the problem does. And lastly, I will answer his third question. The description of facts is the cases that show statements of politicians or the simple facts. The explanation of facts is the cases that the writer explains the backgrounds and intentions of the actions and statements. The active commentary is the cases the writer show definitely public views as a newspaper. For example, the government should do blah blah blah. Yes, that's it.
Sorry. Does it mean you think it is an objective standard, or it's up to interpretation?
I think it is the objective standard.
Okay, and similarly to the answer to the second question, so you also think that there is an objective standard that distinguishes between priming effect and framing effect?
Objective.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. And next, Mr. Oda, please.
To first question, I stand for the concept of responsibility because it asserts differentiated responsibility. In view of fairness, imposing uniform duty and responsibility is imposing uniform duty and responsibility can be surprising to present generation. To second question, Agenda 21 is similar to the concept of responsibility because Agenda 21 and the concept of responsibility asserts differentiated responsibility. Agenda 21 asserts common but differentiated responsibility. The concept of responsibility asserts that we have responsibility to future generation on our will. Third question. I think it is difficult to legislate based on intergenerational ethics. As I mentioned before, intergenerational ethics intergenerational ethics can suppress the present generation. Therefore, therefore, it must be noted that holistic theory and intergenerational ethics theory, ethical theory can cause environmental fascism. Environmental fascism means that suppressing present generation for environmental protection or consider for future generation. So I think it is difficult to legislate based on intergenerational ethics.
Okay, thank you. Then we move to the floor discussions. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand and please come up to the center in front of microphones. And do you have any questions or comments?
Hi, my name is Catherine. I was wondering, in the I'm not very familiar with Japanese news outlets, but in the US, we know typically if you want a conservative perspective, you turn on Fox News, or if you want a liberal perspective, you turn on MSNBC. I was wondering, in Japan, what kind of biases or perspectives, whether along political lines or other lines, do your news outlets have, if any? So you were talking about bias in your presentation, so I'm wondering what kind of biases do you look for when you're reading the news?
So your question is a bias for the political bias or social bias or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
In particular, in Japanese newspaper, I picked up Asahi newspaper and Yomiuri newspaper. Asahi newspaper tend to oppose to the attitude of the government, but the Yomiuri newspaper tend to accept the attitudes of the government. So the political biases of the newspaper is a little influence the editorials. Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, and I have some short questions. Yes, as I asked before, it is a related question. So, how can you distinguish between priming effect and framing effect? And in what sense can you say the newspaper only taking the priming effect rather than framing effect?
Just a moment, please. Just a moment, please.
Oh, okay.
The standard
Standard.
in this program. I will answer repeatedly, sorry, but in the problem of US basis, the framing effect is that the mass media definitely argue in the editorials how general people think about US basis and how the government should do as the opinion of newspaper. So, yes, and the priming effect is that mass media repeatedly tell that problem and explain the background and intentions of it, and people tend to think it with those background or intentions. For example, newspaper tend to explain the backgrounds of JUST, the security treaty between Japan and the United States of America. Yes, and the more the media explain that backgrounds, the more people tend to link the background of JUST to this Okinawa's problem. It is priming effect. Yeah, and there are little cases of framing effect in the editorials, but there are many cases of priming effect in the editorials, because the more the number of the descriptions of facts increases, the more the sum of the articles about the problem does.
Okay. I don't know, it is a priming effect or framing effect, but for example, we had the very much high approval rate of the first upper cabinet. So, in a theoretical standpoint, how can you explain the high approval rate of first upper cabinet? Is it priming effect or framing effect?
It is the priming effect. In the age of the first Abe cabinet, mass media hardly paid attention to the Abe's ability of making policies, and there were a few political career of Abe which formed his ability, in fact. But the Yomiuri newspaper told the high approval rate of him in its opinion polls, because 34% people had a fresh image to him, and 22% people could believe his good personality. This means that people can get the knowledge for the specific issue with the sense and impression formed by education and their experience, even if the information of continuous facts, which is essential to the formation of opinions, do not exist enough in Japan.
Okay, thank you. Way back to the floor. Do you have any other comments? Any questions?
Thank you for your presentations. I have a question for Minami. My question is your conclusion about the relation between mass media and public opinion. Can it be applied to other cases, or generalized, or is it specific to Okinawan case? And the second question is relating to my first question. And my second question is why did you choose Okinawa as a case study for this presentation? That's all.
Sorry, as for the first question, the other case means the other case between media and public opinion.
Her conclusion about the relation between mass media and public opinion can be applied to other cases than Okinawa, or generalized, or to what extent can it be generalized?
To the first question, it has been said that the mass media. I will answer conclusion. my hypothesis cannot be generalized now, because my paper's objection is to deny the phrase the mass media has controlled the public opinion. So I do not conclude. I cannot conclude mass media do not control the public opinion perfectly, but if you understand my research, we cannot say perfectly the mass media controlled the public opinion. So at now I cannot generalize my hypothesis. And to second question, this problem of the U.S. bases in Okinawa is one of the problems which we can separate the people's thinking in favor of the U.S. bases and opposed to the U.S. bases. So it represented to the tangible opinions. So I pick up this problem.
As for the answer to the second questions, so this case, U.S. based in Okinawa, is a very politicized subject. The yes or no, the affirmative or negative. So you choose this case, right?
Yes.
Okay. And next lady.
Hi, my name is Rock. I have a question to Shunsuke. So you talked about how you said imposing duty to concern future generation on the present generation is not just right, and you also talked about it's hard to just justify the policy, but at the same time we must take measures to solve environmental problems. So I was wondering, what are some possible solutions to solve environmental problems? I know it's not part of your research maybe, but then...
Do you mean that what I think?
Because you didn't quite agree with Agenda 21 as well. So I was thinking, like, what are some solutions?
What I think to solve the environment problem. Yes. I think to solve the environment problems, just a moment, please. In my presentation, I mean that the environment might be indirectly ethically considerable. considerable because it has the foundations for building and sustaining human community. Therefore, anthropocentrism motivates people to protect nature. We might don't need non-anthropocentrism to solve the environmental problem. So, for example, Michigan Environmental Protect Act is a law to protect environment. This law isn't based on environmental ethics because this law extends boundaries of legal standing to human beings standings. So if you don't have if you and hand for example an construction project is occurred. So if you think its project can destruction the environment, so you you go to court if you don't have directly relations that construction that project. So if
Sorry, I think the question is if we take what you present, the environmental ethics or intergenerational ethics, can we solve any actual and real environmental problems? Is that right? Yeah. In other words, how intergenerational ethics is helpful to solve the actual environmental problems.
Intergenerational ethics gives us to intergenerational ethics shows the needs of to preserve the environment. So we should take measure to solve the environmental problems. However, but as I mentioned before, in intergenerational ethical theories are criticized and intergenerational ethics have big problems. So practically, intergenerational ethics have intergenerational ethics impractically. Intergenerational ethics can't influence to, for example, law and policy. But environmental ethics might influence making law and policies. For example, the California foie gras law, which prohibits the forced feeding of a bird for the purpose of enlarging the bird's liver beyond normal size, as well as the sale of products that are a result of this process. This is a sort of environmental ethical thought.
Okay, and do you have any other related comments? Okay, and relating to this point, is there any relationship between the intergenerational ethics and the environmental fascism in your presentation?
So once more.
Is there any relations or is there any influence between intergenerational ethics and environmental fascism?
Intergenerational ethics intergenerational ethics is a thought to extend the boundaries of considerations in time. It means future generations should be considered. But if we must consider 100 future generation in the future, or 1,000 generation, 1,000 future generations. So, intergenerational ethics extending the boundaries indefinite. It is indefinite that environmental ethics extend the boundary of considerations. So, if we must consider the generation 1,000 years or more in the future, we can't use any resources. So, for example, a developed country has rights to development, but the environment problem is common problem all over the world. So, but environmental intergenerational ethic has a reason to suppress a developed country to preserve nature. So it is unjust to suppress a developed country to preserve environment. So it is. So it's called eco-fascism, environmental fascism.
Okay, and do you have any other questions from the floor? In your understanding, the environmental fascism is different from intergenerational effects? Is there any possibilities for intergenerational effects becoming the like environmental fascism?
Yes.
Yes. Could you explain more?
Briefly, eco-fascism, environmental fascism eco-fascism means to justify suppressing of human rights for environmental protection. Intergenerational sort of intergenerational ethics can cause eco-fascism because as I mentioned, so it is indefinite considerations that we should consider 100 future generation 100 years in the future or 1,000 years in the future. So we present generations, so as present generations suppress so in the generational ethical theories.
Okay, thank you. And can I back to the Minami's paper? We back to the framing effect and the framing effect. So, do you have any clear examples of framing effect other than US based in Okinawa?
I pick up the nuclear electric power generation. The forces of promoting nuclear electric power generation do not argue that it is same thing, that we do not need nuclear electric power generation, and we do not need the electricity. However, the counterforce pretend that the other forces argue that way. In short, the framing effect is to link two absolutely different things.
So, you mean in the case of atomic power plants, the media is a framing? It's media framing atomic power plants things. Actually, it relates to Professor O's questions. I think you mentioned the media. Yeah, media is taking priming effect rather than the framing effect. Can you say same things in the other cases?
Maybe a little. I can say that. Yes. Japanese media, in particular newspaper, tend to explain how public opinion, how general people think about the problems, about some problems, based to the opinion polls. For example, this nuclear electric power generation, Asahi newspaper usually say that people do not need the nuclear electric power generation after the earthquake of 2011 in Tohoku. So a little. I can say a little that mass media use the priming effect rather than the framing effect. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for presentation. My name is Saki Kishimoto from the University of Tokyo. I have a question for Namaguchi-san. Your presentation was about the traditional theory that mass media is controlling public opinion, but I was just wondering what makes people assume that their opinions are controlled in the first place. Thank you.
Sorry, is it a question or comments?
Question, why do you think people fear that their opinions are controlled by media?
I explained the traditional theory, three theories. They are famous in Japan. In particular, the agenda setting is most famous in Japan. We get the information from mass media, usually newspaper, TV, or the internet. But we usually believe the information from newspaper or TV is correct. So if we see a specific problem more times, we feel the mass media controlled our opinion. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Yes. We have another 5 minutes. Okay. If you don't have any questions, we conclude here. Thank you for your cooperation and kind attention. Thank you.